Embracing your inner NZT. What does that really look like? Today on Behind the Book, we have guest Danny Ho from Scarab Digital. Let's jump in. I'm Heather Andrews, and on Behind the Book, we journey beyond the cover. On each episode, I dive deep into the minds of authors, unlocking the mysteries behind their literary creations. Discover the stories behind the book exclusively here with me. In the previous episode, we spoke about exploring the limitless potential, and we talked a little bit about the analogy of the movie Limitless. So welcome back, Danny.
Thank you.
Excellent. And just to kind of back to the previous episode, we talked about finding that NZT. And if you can just give us just a little bit of a rewind on that. What is finding your NZT?
Well, essentially, the NZT in the movie Limitless represents a drug that allowed the character Eddie Mora to find his, to tap his brain into completely the best of the best that he can be, be all you can be.
Yeah.
And in the movie, there's an example there where a certain circumstance, he sort of had to get out of a dicey scenario.
Yeah.
And he thinks back all the way back into his college years, where there was a title of a book specifically that his roommate's girlfriend had, and then he was able to apply exactly that knowledge at the time of his scenario.
Yeah.
Which, so it goes that deep. It's your subconscious, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so to me, tapping your potential is basically finding your inner self first.
Yeah.
What really is you, and how can you apply that to what you do every day?
Beautiful. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And we talked about in the previous episode also just into, how you took kind of like that unlimitless, embracing that piece of yourself. And then you had found the Clifton strengths and how it found, when you put your teams together, it really kind of made everybody just work together better and some of those key points. Mm-hmm. But we were talking about the outcomes of what implementing Clifton strengths for you as well as your staff into your team potential. What have been some of those outcomes for you after implementing Clifton strengths into your corporation?
So it's a few steps. So one of them is, as I say, finding yourself. Mm-hmm. And so understanding your own strengths. You at first glance you see these strengths and their definitions and such, and you might even question them, and you might even be surprised that those are your top 5. Mm-hmm. And then when you dive into it and you apply, your everyday kind of thing. For example, I'm not going to speak about myself, but I know there's a strength specifically. For example, adaptability. Adaptability is a perfect strength for someone who does triage. Mm-hmm. So you have a bodies all lying all around. Everyone has need and care. Someone with adaptability has a high acuity for that moment. Who should get priority and who should get addressed first?
Absolutely.
So, applying that directly to the role and understanding that. So people who have adaptability, though, so there's a balcony and a basement of Clifton strengths. You want to be in your balcony. You want to be in the sweet spot.
Yeah.
There's a basement portion where you have to be sort of like blinders of knowing where it's not that great of a thing.
Right.
For example, someone with adaptability, notorious that you'll see milk on the counter, mm-hmm. or they're like that classic squirrel. Oh, okay, I'm now seeing that, and I'm going to go chase that. So there's other things like achiever. Achiever is execution strength, and so that's really good because you have a high tendency to take on a lot of work, and means you can have a lot of spinning plates.
Right.
However, you can imagine someone with achiever might take on in the basement portion of that is you might take on too much work.
Right.
So, and it's sort of understand your guardrails and be aware of them so that you can actually sort of be in your tip top, right? And so, in applying it with our company, it's created such an alignment and common language center around your team, and so you have a greater understanding of the person and how they think and how they operate, and how to relate to them and how to think from their perspective, and understand that they don't have strengths that overlap with yours. So how do you mitigate that? Or there's another layer of understanding it. This goes deep. It goes so deep. I'm learning to this very day. Yeah. And so you can still have people coming to the same conclusion, same result, but they come to it from a different way, and just to understand that. Yeah. People with there's categories in it. There's they have themes. So there's strategic, there's influencing, there's relationship, and there's execution. Those are the four large themes that they fall under. Right. And so to see someone with influencing strengths is pretty remarkable, because influencing, it means that they are highly motivated to just move things forward and actually impose on people very naturally. And so, you would imagine, someone like Steve Jobs, he would highly have an influencing strength in his top. You see where I'm coming from? I do. So, if you know where you have gaps in your company or teams, it becomes a great tool to understand when you're hiring. That's, if you do an analysis across the board in your top fives across your current team, and say you had, there's, we're pretty even across the board on strategic, we're pretty even across the board on relationship, we're pretty strong on, say, influencing, but our team needs high execution, but we're weak in execution, then that means now when you're hiring, okay, well, you should be looking for someone that's very strong, or team members that are strong in execution, so that they can round the team up.
Well, it's beyond the job. It's beyond the job description, really.
Yes.
Like, there's the role, but then what do you need? Because you can teach the role, but who's to say that you not necessarily can teach the execution?
No, exactly.
I hear what you're saying.
Exactly. It's a natural. You're looking for natural skill stacks, right? They might really love what you're doing and what the job description is, but are they the best fit for it? Exactly.
Absolutely. I love that. Thank you for sharing. And you go a little bit deeper in your chapter in Culture Revolution, and that stuff fascinates me. So when we got talking about it at the very beginning, it was like, ooh, this is going to be good.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
So tell us a little bit about what writing in the chapter of Culture Revolution, what was the biggest sort of the transformation for you?
For me, I really tried my best to take the standpoint that I wanted people to be able to have a key takeaway. Yeah. And so I've learned myself so much along the way. Yeah. And so, especially coming from an entrepreneur mindset, you'll question things. Is this going to work, or is it not going to work? I just wanted to transpose my learning experiences into the chapter so that they can maybe ingrain themselves in my thought process, and then see and relate to them, and see it from either a leadership or a managerial or entrepreneurial standpoint. So it really, it's a tough job to kind of stay on point to kind of keep that focus, Yeah, exactly. And so, there's so many other, self-help books that any entrepreneur would be looking at. And so, one of the first things I remember reading from someone else's book, they said, is that one thing they would recommend to everybody who's book writing is not to write a business self-help book. Because it's a lot of responsibility, right? So, I was trying to embody that and try to at least pass on the knowledge at the same time. I know some of the
besides raising my children, launching my company was probably one of the biggest things I've burst. I think it was even more expensive than raising children, but that's a whole that's a other episode.
Yeah, that's pretty deep there. That's pretty deep.
So we were talking during the break about your kid. You've got 2 children, and what did they think of you writing in a book?
I think this novel, they're pretty young.
Yeah, okay.
And they're invited to the launch.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be fun to find out from their perspective and, see how their dad has grown and, and applied himself.
Yeah.
And I think it's pretty clear to me that I used to wonder if they even understand that Daddy's is Daddy the boss or is he not?
Yeah.
I try to not use that sort of terminology.
Yeah.
I try to refrain from saying that. I call everyone a colleague. Everyone's a coworker. I try to, but I think they still kind of get the sense that Daddy's the boss.
Yeah. Well, sometimes when they get to be teenagers, Danny, you'll want them to know that you're the boss, and you'll find your dad voice very,
Right.
I remember my kids; they were like, "Oh boy, we never want to hear the mom voice because the mom voice they still say." It still haunts them.
It's funny you mentioned the kids. I've pegged a few strengths. They're still developing, obviously. So in the Clifton Strengths world, they say don't make an assessment before 16.
Yeah.
Though I can see some very clear traits in my children, and each one is different. And it's hard not to look at it from that perspective. And now I find myself trying to coach. How do you coach around that? How do you embrace those strengths and help them, guide them, knowing the balcony and basements, right?
Yeah.
So it's super interesting to see in your own child.
Absolutely. And I always said that you might raise them the same and love them the same, but they're all going to take what they want from each genetic pool. And I think it was you who said we were born with our own DNA and we were going to bring that into the culture, and then we all had this. So that just, I could do my own book just on what I've learned from all of you in this book.
Right.
Just summing it up. But
you've hit it on the head, though. That in the Clifton Strengths of it all, it truly is an interwoven DNA. There's your top 5, but then there's your top 10.
Yeah.
And so your top 10 is, you have to, in theory, I've said the top 5 strengths, it comes very naturally to you.
Yeah.
The top 10, they're in you, but you have to dig deeper for them. It's not something naturally innate to you. In fact, they might not be things you might be able to do them well. You can apply them, but you actually don't love doing them. Mm-hmm. You definitely love doing your top 5.
Yeah.
So, but it's a skill stack in your top 10 that you can still apply yourself. So again, within your team members, you have that sort of like a secondary lever that you can actually, capitalize on.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And I think that in one of the previous interviews as well, it was Cameron, who threw it back on me and said, well, how did it make you a better parent? I was like, well, that wasn't supposed to happen. But everything that I did from a corporate management perspective, it rippled over. So when you talk about, you see these different traits in your kids and you're like, oh, how do I get them to embrace their strengths? And really because that becomes that pace of who they are and growing kids with confidence. And that's absolutely a whole other episode too.
Right, absolutely. I agree.
So where can people find you, Danny, on social media?
So you can find us over at on the web. It's scarabdigital.com, and you can also find me on LinkedIn. We are also on Facebook as well as Instagram.
Perfect. Thank you. Make sure you check out the Culture Revolution book on Amazon. As we move forward and we talk more with Danny on the next episode about what the cool projects are that him and his company do. Stay tuned and make sure that you embrace your own NZT. It's been a literary voyage here on Behind the Book. My sincerest thanks to our featured authors for letting us peek behind the curtain. I'm Heather Andrews, urging you to keep exploring the vast universe of literature. Until our next chapter, happy reading.